And now on the line is Jimmy Fearon. Jimmy is the CEO of DEBRA Ireland, or to give them their full name, DEBRA Ireland, the butterfly skin charity. Jimmy, welcome to Nero FM.
Great to be on, and thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Jimmy, today is my first time to talk to you on radio and to do an interview with anyone from your organisation and indeed cover the issue of butterfly skin illness, or EB in general. As this is my first interview with you, can you let our listeners know, Jimmy, for those who don't know, a bit about who DEBRA Ireland are and why you were set up?
Sure, absolutely. Essentially, the condition is called EB, and EB is a genetic skin condition, which means that the skin is as fragile as a butterfly's wings, and hence the name. What does that mean? That means that the dermis and the epidermis, there's a protein missing. So whereas you and I might go for, if we trip over and scrape our knee, it will heal within a few days and we'll see it healing and the skin will close. People with EB, at the most severe, 70% of their body could be covered in wounds that don't heal. So in other words, a fall for somebody with EB could result in a wound that lasts for months, and necessitating, if it's 70% of your body that's covered in wounds, necessitating bandage changes every second day that could take up to 3 to 4 hours. That's the worst part of EB. It affects every organ in your body except your brain. Though your brain is impacted from a psychological point of view of having to deal with the trauma of your body, being in such a bad way, and it results long term in for the cases, the recessive dystrophic cases, it results in life limiting condition, and potentially wheelchair, and also a cancer kicks in to a squamous cell skin cancer. So it's often described as the worst condition you've never heard of, and it is pretty nasty condition, and for families living with it, it's a major challenge, in and out of the hospital all the time. So that's and our job essentially. Why do we exist? To support these families essentially, and to try and make their pathway through life as easy as it can be, given what's going on. So what does that mean? It means we ensure that they are getting the right support they should get from the government. So we advocate to ensure that there's a good care pathway and there's good hospital supports from them all the way through their life and all through the transitions. We have family support workers that visit the families in their home and listen to them, because like yourself, not a lot of people know about it, and they, and that can be hard, having to explain yourself all the time. So for a parent or a person living with EB, to be able to sit with somebody who gets it is a lovely, is a nice, validation of where they're at in their life. And then the third bit we do is research, which is essentially looking to see, is there treatments out there that we can invest in, that in the long term medium to long term will improve their quality of life, and they're the three kind of areas we cover,
Okay. I was telling you before the interview, I don't actually know anyone with EB in Ireland, but I have heard of the condition a couple of times over the years. Sounds like a terrible illness to have. But I believe I was looking at their website, I believe that there are only around 300 people with EB in Ireland. And I know you just mentioned it, saying a lot of people don't know about the condition, but would I be right in assuming, Jimmy, that your research says that the majority of people in Ireland don't actually know much, if anything, about the illness?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I suppose that's the problem with rare diseases. And there's, I think, 7 to 8% of the population have rare diseases in Ireland. But rare diseases that are only impacting on a small group. Yeah, you're every time we talk to people about EB or try and introduce to EB, we're having to explain yourself all the time, what it is, how does it work, and people are kind of mystified on it. So occasionally we get some good coverage we've been on the late 2 times, if not more actually, and that helps to increase the coverage. So a lot of people have a sense of the butterfly, but they don't actually understand the condition in detail. But for a rare disease, we've done our best to beat the drums and try and get as many people to know about it, because part of the big problem, Darren, is this whole issue of the stigma. So we ran an EB awareness week there 2 years ago. We do it every year, but this particular family lives down in the country, in a town in the country, and after the campaign they turned around and said, for the first time, I think the local people I know get it. So our job, we kind of tick the box and say, great, because the stigma of living with EB is nothing worse than people looking at you and going, what's that? Is it contagious? This sort of attitude, which is perfectly normal, but it's not there if people know about it, if you know what I mean. So our job is to beat the drum, increase the awareness, reduce the stigma. And so people say, oh, you have EB. Yeah, I heard about that on the radio the other day. So getting coverage like this for us is fantastic, because as a result of this, thousands upon thousands of people who listen to your show will be aware of it as well,
Yeah, one of my friends did a run, this is probably 10 or more years ago, in aid of your organisation, so that's how I first heard about EB. I found it striking from reading your website and learning more about the condition that skin blisters have to be lanced and dressed every day, and this can take up to 3 hours every day. That must be very traumatic, is it?
I mean, that's when you're trying to explain to people what this is about, that what you've just described sums it all up. It's just, for some families it's every day, for some families it's every second day. As you get older, and it could be every day. But there's 3 kind of big sessions that could be 3 to 4 hours, and then the other days might be an hour and a half in terms of. But you're right, that whole process, because it involves removal of bandages, it involves typically a bathing process, in and out of a bath. It involves replacement of processes. It requires blistering. It, as you say, lancing of blisters. It is. When I close my eyes and think about it, it's unimaginable. I've seen, it in action in terms of video, but I cannot imagine how horrendous the process is for a parent, particularly if there's no supports in place. For a parent to have to do that to somebody that's not in the guidebook for being a parent, this is totally alien. It goes against all the rules of parenting, because parents want to be hugging, they want to be given love, and for a parent to have to do that is pretty horrendous, and that's part of our job, is to try and get supports into the house. 9 hours support a week to take away those bandage changes from the parents, 9 to 12 hours a week, and let them be the person that the child runs to after the bandage changes have been completed. But you're right, that is the most horrendous part of EB is the bandage changes, and we're doing our best to try and and the treatment for EB hasn't changed probably since the medieval ages. You know what I mean? There's nothing. The bandages have got better for sure. No two ways about that. But the actual treatment, the bandage process remains the same.
In other words, for people who mightn't registered with them, it's extremely painful, isn't it?
Oh, extremely painful. It's and the with some if you've got a bad burn, it's sometimes compared to having bad 3rd-degree burns, but with the burn, it heals over time, and the frequency of bandage changes reduces. With EB, it doesn't. It's relentless. It's like it's just, you can't miss a bandage change. So it's like a train that keeps coming at you, and nothing you can do to stop it. And it becomes, some parents, they say, one of the expressions is "see me, not EB." So what you're trying to do for parents is to see help them to see the child, not EB. And they struggle with that process, because EB dominates their life. So you're trying to put the person first and the EB second, but in so many families, EB is first, and the individual is second, because it's such a horrendous condition, and causes such pain on the families, on the person and on the families. And there's nothing worse, as if you're watching someone you love in pain, is pretty horrendous. You do anything to stop the pain as a parent or as a sibling. So our job is to try and do our best to improve the quality of life for people living with EB, to fight for them, because the fight with a lot of the families is they don't have the time, they don't have the resources to fight for care. A lot of them do, but it can be challenging, very challenging.
Okay. I got your press release on Monday, Jimmy, and I read that you and Deborah are making and have been making the reasonable call that there should be a full-time psychologist in Ireland to deal with the EB community. We've already kind of touched on this, but can you tell me a bit more about this call of yours, Jimmy?
Sure, sure. I mean, we put it into the pre-budget submission, so we've asked the government to ring fence money for a full-time psychologist in St James's Hospital. The challenge there is that for many centres around, when you visit a centre, you get a multidisciplinary team that supports you. So that team could be made up of a dermatologist, a psychologist, in some cases an oncologist, pain management, osteoporosis expert. So it's a mix, a dietitian. So there's a mix of skills, but the skill that's missing, in particular, is the psychologist piece, and we're asking for that to be there, because when you sit down as a parent, let's say as a parent or an adult, and you sit down and you're dealing with EB, the two people, I suppose, that are your leads, one is the dermatologist, because the dermatologist treats your EB, and two is the psychologist, because the psychologist, the impact on your mind in terms of your mental health and your well-being is massive. So, in an ideal world, when a person sits down, they sit down with those two faces are the people that come to help them. That's not the case in Ireland at the moment. Similarly, in Crumlin, there's no psychologist there at the moment either, and they're looking to replace the person at the moment, as in not replace, but as in there's a vacancy there. But the money at least is allocated there, whereas it's not allocated in St James's, and we're looking for that. There's a 0.25%, but we want 100% role of a psychologist in St James's is what we're looking for. But the impact would be, because as I said to you earlier, there's two sides to this. One is the actual pain of, EB, and then the second is the pathway to care for that pain. And there can be as much pain if the pathway to care for that pain is disrupted or is not there. An equal amount of pain comes from, like, our families screaming out for nurses to come to their home, our families screaming out for bandages, to ensure that the bandages are being delivered on time, trying to get onto the hospital to get onto the HC in terms of getting greater support in the home. So there's all these other things that one would assume when you have such a severe condition will all be in place, but they're not. We've a good team. There is good teams in the hospitals that are, fighting their cause, fighting for the families, but they need more funds. They need more support themselves. And the psychologist is kind of where our big ask is at the moment, to try and get that in situ. And as we said in the article, they are literally crying out, because our team are on the road visiting the families, and the biggest piece that's coming back is this emotional piece, this psychological piece that is causing serious damage to the families.
And like a psychologist deals both with people who have EB and their families, so it's not just one or the other, isn't it? It's both, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The primary one is the individual, but the family are part of that circle. So if you help the family, if you help the care, you help the person in with EB. So it's that circle. You're right, because it needs to be the circle of carers and family, I should say, that are around. But obviously, the primary person they're meeting is the person living with EB.
You mentioned St James's Hospital and Crumlin Hospital. Are there any other hospitals in Ireland that deal with people who have EB?
No, they're the centres, the main centre. So no matter where you're born in the country, you'll end up, if you have EB, you'll end up in if you're born with EB, you'll end up in Crumlin. So there's the dermatologist, and there's a team in there that are familiar with EB, and Dr. Fiona Brown heads up the team in there, and she's a diamond in terms of her knowledge of EB and her support for families. But you'll end up in one of the other hospitals. Those two hospitals.
You'll either end up so there is a service in James's as well. There's just not a psychologist, is there?
That's right. Yeah, there's other roles that are there's no consultant there at the moment, which is also a massive big challenge. Um, that's another piece of work we need to do. But at the moment, I suppose the focus is on that psychologist and trying to give support there for the families. Yeah, they're the two centres for
Okay.
EB, and and they're literally the expertise is within that. It's those teams, but they also plug into other resources, as I said earlier, other departments within the hospitals to give support for the families. Because, as I said, it spreads across every organ in the body. So it's pretty horrendous condition.
Yeah. My impression of it is that the St James services and the service in St James has only been down a couple of staff recently. Are you in any way confident or optimistic, Jimmy, that you will get the green light on the full service you want in James's over the course of the rest of this year?
Um, it's been going on a while now, so we are anxious and we are nervous and we are hoping that we're hoping that the investment will be made and that James's will get back to where it was a number of years ago. It is definitely a shadow of what it was in terms of the service, with a lack of a consultant is the big thing and a lack of a psychologist. So we there's the people in there are fighting like demons to get it right, but we're just hitting barriers. Funds are being allocated, but the kind of the details of the spec are getting mixed, and hence making the roles unfillable. So we're banging on the door all the time, and we're working closely with the team to try and get results. Sometimes it can be a case of functioning within dysfunction, and you have to accept that, and you have to keep moving the chess board around to try and improve things and get things better. There's no doubt the will and the intention of the team in St James's is positive, and they're all they care about is the families living with EB, but they need support and they need resources from the Department of Health, and they need because they want the standard, they want the facility to be up to a very high standard. But the longer it goes on, the harder it is for them, because they're fighting, pushing against waves, which can be demoralizing, So, and what our job is to try and advocate for them and with them to get the service back to where it should be at. It's very hard for adults in Ireland at the moment to get access to psychological supports and other supports.